Thank you everyone for attending today's Diversity Project webinar on menopause in the workplace. This is the second webinar in a series that we have scheduled throughout the year. The first webinar that we did was on International Women's Day, a huge success, a significant amount of attendees. And what's great to see is menopause is becoming a far more topical subject. Did you know that 51% of our population will transition through menopause, and everyone will be impacted by it either directly or indirectly, which really forms part of today's webinar. The webinar will cover types of menopause across the range of people, including natural menopause, early or premature menopause, medically induced, or gender affirmation menopause. Before we start, I'd like to say a big thank you to Ray Durrant, who's responsible for putting today's webinar together and for preparing the guide Types of Menopause, which will be available on the Diversity Project website, and the link will be shared in the chat function today. Unfortunately, due to illness, Ray is unable to attend, and we wish Ray well. But if anyone does have any specific questions for Ray, I'm sure they will be more than happy to assist, and we can come back to you in the next few days with any questions that are posted in the chat function. So to get started, I'm pleased to be joined by two speakers. Lorna Brennan, who has agreed to share her experience of medically induced menopause due to cancer treatment. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Lauren Chiron, the founder of Women of a Certain Stage, which some of you may already know or have come across or attended some of Lauren's free webinars. Lauren is the principal coach and catalyst for change. Lauren leads top executives to maintain peak performance throughout their menopause and educates large employers on the menopause and how to implement systems and to retain and ensure top talent flourish. So Lauren, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this webinar and to just increase or consolidate your information, your knowledge, your confidence around talking about the topic of menopause. If I take you back to the 5th of November 2014, I was in work. I was a senior leader in financial services and I was in my early 40s. I'm the sole parent of a child with lifelong medical needs, and I absolutely thrived on the work that I did. It was complex, regulatory and compliance change, often lobbying the regulators, making sure that what we did in the business kept the lights on and gave people access to their bank accounts, and made sure that our directors stayed out of jail or away from difficult questions. I loved that complexity. I loved taking really ambiguous bits of legislation and regulation, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and then delivering it to my teams so that they could land the change for our business. So imagine my surprise when I found myself sitting in board meetings, often the only female in the room, unable to get the word plan out of my head during a planning meeting. Or the day that I sat in a meeting with 3 of my directors, holding onto the arms of the chair, glancing at the clock, watching it tick down for the full 45 minutes of the meeting, waiting for everyone to leave the room, gripping the arms of the chair so tightly because I thought if I let go, I was going to fall off the chair. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was having palpitations. I didn't even know what that was. I used the wall to get back to my desk, kind of Marcel Marceau-like, for fear of falling over. There was one day that I drove home from work. I came in the door, said hi to everyone, put my bags down, and apparently I turned around, picked my bags up and said to everyone, "See you later." They asked me where I was going. I said, "I'm going to work." They said, "You've just come home." Over the course of about 18 months, I started to really struggle with my sleep. If I did fall asleep at night, I would wake up feeling hot and sweaty. In fact, the bed linen would be soaking. It got to the point where I had to lie on a towel because it was much easier halfway through the night to pull a towel out and lie on a fresh one than it was to change the bed linen. I didn't know what was going on. I thought perhaps, my son had been in hospital, been critically ill. I was fairly senior in what I was doing, and I did have a very demanding job. But all of these types of things were things that I'd always thrived on in the past. I love challenge. My self-esteem, my self-confidence started to take a bit of a hit. The less I slept, the more hyperactive I got, completely the opposite of most people who would just become really fatigued and tired. I started training harder, working longer, but there was nothing smart about what I was doing. I didn't know which side was up. I was really lucky. I had built an incredible team both here in the UK, in the States and in India, and they were solid. We didn't drop the ball in anything and everything ticked over. In fact, I had an amazing bonus and I also got top team award for a piece of work that I landed. So imagine my surprise when I got called into my boss's office and he suggested to me, ever so subtly, that I had been happier when I was doing that personal training job of mine. Or that I'd been walking around the office with looking as if I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, which wasn't exactly becoming of a senior leader in the organisation, and perhaps it was something I should go home and think about. So the 5th of November 2014 is a date I won't forget, because those comments have lived in my memory ever since. And they were the death knell of my confidence at work. After that conversation, I basically worked from home for the next few weeks, trying to figure out what was going on. If I did get any sleep at night, I'd wake up in the morning looking as if I'd been mauled by a cat. I'd scratched my dry, itchy skin until it was red raw. My eyes were itchy, my hair was brittle, my nails kept on breaking. I noticed that I was having more dental work than usual, and every time I went to the dentist, it was just so painful. My gums were bleeding and everything just felt awful. I've always been really fit. I'm a former personal trainer and sports therapist and nutritional advisor. I'm a short distance sprinter and I'm a judoka. I love short, sharp sports, power sports. But in my infinite wisdom, while I was going through all of this, I thought I would train for a marathon. I have never had more injuries in all my life. All of this was going on and none of it made any sense. I know about anatomy and physiology. I know about nutrition and sleep and rest and relaxation. I've worked in this space for years. And yet everything that I knew just didn't seem to make sense anymore. Everything that I was doing just felt so much harder. Life felt like I was walking through a treacle every single day. Well, ultimately, I left my job. I left my job thinking I had early onset dementia. I'd watched my grandmother go through Alzheimer's, and it's something that we've always talked about in our family. I genuinely believed that I was going to have to find someone to bring up my son, find a home where I could literally rock in the corner, be looked after by other people. And I figured I had to leave my job really quickly because I didn't know how much time I had left before I wouldn't be able to make decisions for myself. So 3 short months later, when I sat in my doctor's surgery for my 3rd visit to him to hear my blood test results, fully expecting to get the really bad news, you could have knocked me over with a feather when he turned around and said to me, "To be sure, Lauren, you've just been through the menopause." Menopause? I was the happiest menopausal woman in Bristol. Go me, right? I'll take menopause over early onset dementia any day. So when did I go through menopause? Well, I don't know. We think I had a premature menopause. I had my son just before my 38th birthday. I fed him for a year and then I was on contraceptive pill that meant that I didn't have another cycle. So from the age of 36, 37, when I fell pregnant, I hadn't had a bleed. So did I have an early menopause or did I have a premature menopause? We'll never ever really know. But we suspect that I went straight from having my son straight into menopause. So that was, for me, something of a real eye-opener because I sat in that doctor's surgery that day and I looked at my doctor and I'd done nothing but cry every time I'd gone to see him. It felt like the only place where I could just let it all out. I used to go through boxes and boxes of tissues when I went to see him. And on that day, I just literally looked at him and said, I have to go and speak to employers. I have to let them know that this is a thing. And in that moment, I knew that I had to get people together to talk about menopause. But back then, I thought menopause was something that women went through. I thought menopause was something that was hot flushes and mood swings. But I knew that hadn't been my experience because there were so many other things that were going on, so many other symptoms. And how do you unpick those things from just life stress? How do you unpick those things from thyroid problems or adrenal fatigue? How do you know whether it's your general health and well-being? I have clients that come to me who are senior people in business going through menopause, really struggling to cope. But the real fact of the matter is that with the right education, the right knowledge, and the right support, you can make all the changes for yourself, and you can absolutely successfully navigate your way through menopause. And that's why I'm just delighted to be here talking to you as part of the Diversity Project today. So when I set up Women of a Certain Stage, I changed the age to stage because I realised that menopause can happen at any age. And that's why stage is so important. What I didn't know 8 years ago was that actually, and it makes complete sense, menopause will happen to transgender community or non-binary or gender questioning community. So we've got to be really mindful of our language. We've got to be really inclusive and be aware of what menopause really is, that it is a cessation of our menstrual cycles, that once our menstrual cycles stop, our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, natural estrogen, progesterone, testosterone levels will diminish, and that we may start to experience symptoms. Not everyone will. And we reckon somewhere between 10 and 20% of people will sail through menopause without any symptoms whatsoever. And the more we learn about it and understand about it, the better we can access help and support, the more we can get those numbers up. I see menopause as a badge of honour. I see it as the most incredible time of life. Because if you can think what you've gone through by the time you become menopausal, so if you go through what we think of as a traditional menopause, becoming menopausal somewhere in your 40s, perhaps 50s, and that's just your natural stage, then you've probably gone through an awful lot of stuff in your life. Relationship makeups and breakups, people dying, all sorts of challenges in the workplace, so many things, and you've had monthly cycles to deal with as well. You might have had a medical treatment, you might be having surgery and had to deal with all the things that you've had to have those procedures for, and then you've become menopausal. So no matter which way you cut it, no matter which type of menopause you have, you've been through a lot by the time you become menopausal. So if you've been through all of that, taken on board all those challenges, you become menopausal, you've got the whole of the rest of your life to live without having to worry about monthly cycles anymore. And there is so much opportunity because you are an incredible individual packed with skills, knowledge and experience, and you've just got so much to offer. Across the world, we know that the menopause experience is really varied and different. Different continents, even different parts of different continents, may or may not have words for menopause. The symptoms vary across the globe as well. So have an open mind when it comes to menopause. Give yourself an opportunity just to have a blank canvas. And then as you build your knowledge, complete that canvas and always make space to add a little bit more colour in, a little bit more detail, because it's an evolving journey and we're all learning all the time. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. My name's Lauren Chiron from Women of a Certain Stage.
Thank you, Lauren. I mean, very insightful, and thank you for sharing your own experience as well. I know you need to leave because you're hosting your own Basics of Menopause, which is a free webinar that people can sign up for. We can share the details of that webinar, but if you'd like to share your email address in the chat, that would be very helpful. So while you're still able to stay on, because I know you need to leave about 20 past, it'll be really helpful if anyone has any questions direct for Lauren that she can pick up, or we can post them to Lauren after, or you can email her direct. But thank you very much, Lauren. I mean, just a question from me in terms of menopause and the experience of medically induced menopause. I mean, how likely is it that when a medical professional is explaining, you know, that something that somebody's going through, such as cancer treatment, that they will talk to them about menopause? Is that something that comes hand in hand? Because we know obviously menopause hasn't been a high topic or high on the list of priority for the NHS.
I think it's women's health, isn't it? It's women's health that hasn't, the NHS hasn't been built around women. And we know with the Women's Health Survey that was done a couple of years ago, we're beginning to see some reports and some movement on that. But we're a long way away from women's health, menstruation, fertility, and menopause getting the time and attention that they need. And I think what's really interesting is that women's health, and I'm saying women's health just because we're mentioning, NHS and the fact that the research is showing us that that has been neglected. So when we look at female reproductive cycle, female anatomy, when we look at menstrual cycles, when we look at menopause, it's poorly understood. It's not trained on, by and large, for our general practitioners, let alone our consultants. So it will be a real postcode lottery, a real pick and mix, whether you're a consultant, whether you've had a hysterectomy, an oophorectomy, a cancer treatment, whether you're going through a transition, whatever the reason is, you might be having treatment for endometriosis, there are fibroids, there are so many things that you could be experiencing that lead you to having surgery or medical intervention that would lead to menopause. And there are some phenomenal medics out there who are really good. And sadly, I get an awful lot more clients coming to me who have, breast cancer recovery, or, they've had a hysterectomy and no one has told them that they're going to have a cliff edge menopause. And that's a very different experience to someone who's, natural estrogen, progesterone, testosterone levels are naturally declining. If you suddenly have that, that complete drop in hormones, when you think about the fact that these hormones are all collectively responsible for your heart health, your brain health, your bone and joint health, your musculature, how your digestive system works, everything that you are is informed by these hormones and the interplay between them. And it's a lot more complex than that. But if someone suddenly goes, whoop, you're just going to whip the majority of that away, your body's going to work differently. So, I think sadly, we're not at a place yet where we are routinely informed and supported. There's a lot of debate about what treatments people can and can't have. And there is a huge split in the medical community as well about, what way we should move forward when it comes to different treatments as well. So I work with a number of different consultants and they've got different points of view. So yeah, it's a really great question, and it's something that we need to be really mindful of, especially from an employment point of view. If you've had someone transitioning, you've had someone going off for medical or surgical, procedures, that you will have a back to work plan for them based on what they went off for, but actually the fallout of all of that could be menopause, and that's a whole other, ballgame to be planning for.
Yeah. So you mentioned that cliff edge menopause. So if it's a natural menopause, your perimenopausal, it's that kind of transition stage, which, talking from personal experience, has been hard enough. But for somebody that is having that cliff edge menopause, I mean, those symptoms must be all encompassing and quite shocking when you're dealing with the reason for you going through menopause in the first place, medically induced, etc., that transition, and then menopause comes with it. And, the focus, is it there? Are people supported enough?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I believe Lorna's going to be, shining some more light on that as well. So, definitely don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but, it's something that I considered myself pretty hot when it came to anatomy and physiology and understanding the mind-body connection when it comes to human performance, former athlete. But menopause was something that just literally pulled the rug from under my feet and I fell over. And, the other thing we don't talk about are the links with mental health and the fact that people going through menopause round about the age, there's a spike in people age 45 to 49 taking their own life. And that's serious. It's really important that we start to understand that these hormones have significant roles in our bodies. And that's why I focus a lot of my training on getting people to just understand the interplay of their hormones with other, body systems, because there's a lot you can do to manage that and to control it. So the more information we can get out there, the better experience we're going to have transitioning through.
And for those that have had medically induced menopause, and as you mentioned, Lorna's going to cover some of this, but if somebody's not able to take HRT, because we talk a lot about HRT and the benefits of taking that, but if somebody's unable to because the type of treatment that they've had or condition they have, what are the kind of alternates?
So there are a number of medical treatments that are available that will be specific and depending on what type of what the cause of their menopause is. So, and there's also divided opinions about whether people who've got estrogen receptive cancers can or can't take HRT. I'm not a medic, so I'm not giving medical advice, and I would never ever do that. But I do have one very, very senior medic person in the medical world who is, she advises a number of people. She's had breast cancer twice and she's on HRT. And that's her decision because her quality of life without the HRT is so poor that she wouldn't want to be here. And she's decided to be on HRT, and that gives her the quality of life. She has regular mammograms. She keeps on top of her testing to make sure that if anything pops its head back up again, it can be treated really quickly. And that's someone who's very senior in women's health. And yet, the prevailing wisdom is you don't put estrogen into your body if you've got an estrogen dependent medical condition, because you don't want to do anything to bring that back. So it's not at all straightforward. When it comes to, there are other medications as well that people can take, and there's controversy around them as well. But again, that's definitely something for medics to talk about. But the key things which, I talk about in day 2 of Menopause, the basics, is we need to be mindful of what estrogen actually does in our body, what testosterone does, what progesterone does, and learn to listen to our own bodies so that we can learn whether our levels are high or low, because when they're high, they have a certain role. When they're low, they have a certain role. And that starts to let us know what we need to do to look after ourselves. We need more rest and relaxation. We need to be better about our sleep hygiene. We need regular routines. We need to be well hydrated. Our body systems don't work well if we're not well hydrated. So the first thing I always lead with is mindset. The number of people I speak to who dread menopause, who see it as this old person's thing, the first place we have to get the right thinking around menopause. We need to embrace it. We need to see it as a badge of opportunity, an incredible honor to get to this point in life, some point in life that a lot of people don't get to. So when we take that positive mindset around menopause and we get ourselves well hydrated, we actually start to balance our bodies out. We can think better. We can have more steady moods. We can potentially sleep better. We get rid of the bloatiness. We can often reduce the inflammation and the pain in our joints and our muscles. Then we can start to look at nutritional changes. We can start to simplify what we're eating and just start to get really good quality nutritional foods in. Movement is really important. We're losing muscle mass as we get older, so you've got to be doing strength training. But your heart health is changing as well. Estrogen is a big protector of the heart. So we need to make sure that we are doing cardiovascular training as well. Don't have to go to the gym, just find something you love and make sure you're doing it on a regular basis. Boundaries, responsibilities, looking after yourself, putting yourself first. Self-care is not about bubble baths and Prosecco. It's about listening to yourself and knowing what you need and then getting it. Learning to say no or not now without guilt. It's about reassessing everything. It's an amazing opportunity just to think about all the habits that we've fallen into because we've become super busy adults looking after everyone and everything else and forgetting about ourselves. So it's a great time of life just to kind of take that step back. Even if you have to lock yourself in the toilets for a couple of minutes every day, just give yourself a moment or two every day just to think about what are your real priorities for the day ahead, what's really important. And the more you can help look after yourself, the more you'll be able to help look after other people too.
Thank you very much, Lauren. As I said before, very insightful, and thank you very much for sharing. And I can see you've posted your email address in the chat, so people can address you directly. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Lorna Brennan, who I referred to slightly earlier, and as Lauren mentioned as well. So Lorna has bravely agreed to share her experience of living with medically induced menopause as a result of cancer treatment. So Lorna, can you give us a little bit of background to how you started to become menopausal? What kind of caused that?
Well, hello everybody. In 2018, I fell ill, and after a few diagnoses, they found out that I had stage 4 ovarian and cervical cancer. So they admitted me to the Royal Marsden straight away, and I started my chemotherapy. I had 6 cycles of that, and then I had an operation where they removed my ovaries and hoovered my womb. And after that, I had 5 weeks of intense radiotherapy every day. And that was in the October 2018. And then in the January 2019, I had 2 rounds of brachytherapy just to make sure that everything had been taken away.
So when you went through that treatment, obviously the primary in stage 4 was to cure you of that cancer. Was there any mention of menopause during that time?
When they, I don't remember a lot. It's a bit hazy. But when they said when the operation was going to happen, I would go straight into the menopause after removing my ovaries, and I did go straight.
What that meant?
Sorry?
Did you know what that meant?
Not really. No, I didn't really need to at that time.
Yeah,
until it.
Because like you say, there was lots going on with the cancer treatment, and menopause, I suppose, for you was secondary. So. Yeah. When did you start experiencing those symptoms? Because as Lauren mentioned, there's that cliff edge. There's no build up to the menopause.
No, but when I got home, I'm not sure if I experienced it straight away because I was so under all the drugs and everything. But when I got home, you just, in the middle of the night, you just wake up with this feeling from head to toe of just pure hot sweat. And it can last for 5 minutes, it can last for 3. It's different every time you get a wave of it, and it completely takes over your body. Yeah, so it's probably.
Have you been able to take HRT?
They offered me HRT, which they gave me, which was called Everol. I tried it for about a month and it didn't agree with me, so they agreed for me to stop it. I got a bit down and upset and put on a lot of weight, literally. Yeah, straight away. Yeah.
So how long was it after your surgery that you went back to work?
So my surgery was in the October. My brachytherapy was in the end of January, beginning of February. I went back to work in the March, and it wasn't very nice. It was uncomfortable. So I started to go back 2 days a week. Then I went back 3 days a week, and then I edged myself home because I felt more comfortable, because no one really knew what I was going through. You tell them, but it wasn't really around as much as it is now then.
So they obviously knew you were having cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Did you disclose to them that menopause was a result of that treatment?
I think I did. I can't really remember. It's still a bit hazy now, everything that I went through. But they allowed me to stay at home because I said about my sweats, and I don't wear a lot of clothes. I wear like you're on a summer holiday. I have fans everywhere because it's more comfortable for me. I feel more comfortable at home rather than in the office. And every time I'd have a moment in the office, it was a bit embarrassing. But so I feel more comfortable here, and they don't really talk about it at work because it's more of I work with a lot of men, so they don't really understand, or they don't want to understand. I don't know, it's really hard.
So it's kind of breaking down those barriers and making it kind of normal and acceptable to talk about these things. I think, like you say, when you've combined it with a medical condition, that has forced you into menopause. There's no transition. So,
No.
so you left work as one person and you've come back in a different way.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people that maybe are going through the same, and and it doesn't necessarily have to be due to cancer treatment, but that kind of cliff edge menopause? Disclose, ask people what you need. What would your advice be?
You need to find that person that you can talk to and let them understand how you're feeling, so that if you are feeling, I felt low a few times, quite a few times, and I try and push it to the back of my head, but it doesn't help. You need to talk to somebody about it, and you feel a lot better when you do.
And Lorna, I just wanted to say thank you for your bravery in sharing your experience with us. And if anyone has any questions, going through the same or want to ask you, would you be happy for us to share your email address or post questions to you?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks. So I just now wanted to cover the guide that Ray has kindly put together for us. So as I mentioned, unfortunately, Ray is unwell and unable to join us today. But to really focus on the purpose of today's webinar, it's really focused around changing the language we use around menopause and all the conditions that have been traditionally seen as women's or feminine issues. That is really important for making people feel welcome and that they've got access to education and care. It's very important that we don't silo anyone as a result of the language we use. So yes, menopause historically has been seen as a women's issue, but as we heard from Lauren and Lorna's story, actually menopause can affect many people. So that might be they're not transitioning fully, but they may have a medical condition such as endometriosis, or be going through IVF treatment, for example. And then we go into gender affirmation. So that's something that Ray really wanted to focus on for today's webinar. And being that Ray has personal experience of this, it's an area we really wanted to focus on. So Ray has put together this guide. It will be available on the Diversity Project's website, and also there is a link in the chat for today that everyone can have access to. It talks about all of the different types of menopause that you can go through, and language and terminology to use to help you with that. Additionally, as a work stream, we have a number of different webinars that are scheduled for the rest of the year. And as Laura mentioned earlier, there's the link between mental health. So our next webinar is focusing on mental health, nutrition and exercise. So it's that alternate to taking HRT. It's a different way of being able to help you through the menopause, be that regardless of what type of menopause that you're going through. And then from there, we're also planning on a pledge later in the year to really change the view of menopause and provide a toolkit for employers and diversity members to help them in their organisations, to help support employees such as those going through natural menopause, or like in Lorna's example, going through that cliff edge menopause, and how we address that and how we support individuals. So again, not just women, it can be all individuals. And I think what's been clear from today is it's not a straightforward, yes, a woman goes through menopause at a certain age or a time in their life. So to Lauren's point, women of a certain stage, there could be many, many reasons why somebody is going through menopause, and actually making that more of an open culture that we're using the correct language. As I was mentioning, Diversity Project have commissioned these images and have been licensed to be used in any format or for anyone to use. So again, Please feel free to access these on the Diversity Project website. Again, we have the link within the chat function, to help you to have those conversations in the workplace to support individuals going through the menopause. And any questions anyone has, we're more than happy to support. If you want to get involved in the menopause work stream, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and open to questions if anyone has any questions for Lorna or I, or we can post them to Lauren. So I think on that note, and just before we get pushed off of the system again, apologies for the technical issues that we've been having. Please look out for the webinars that are coming up. Like you say, the next one is mental health, nutrition and exercise. We have the guide available. The work stream are attending menopause training in the next few weeks. So we will become menopause ambassadors within the organisation's champions, and from there we will be putting a toolkit together, which again will be available on the Diversity Project site. So thank you all very much for joining today. I'd like to say a personal thank you to Lorna for sharing her experience and her openness, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.